She woke up bound to a steel table, her body screaming in agony. Cold hands, sharp needles, the sterile scent of antiseptic mixing with the stench of her own fear. She wasn't a patient. She wasn't even human to them anymore. She was a test subject, a vessel, a breeding chamber for something unnatural. She begged them to stop, but they didn't. They cut her open, injected her with things that twisted her from the inside, forced her body to nurture something monstrous. She felt it growing inside her, changing her. The pain was unbearable. But then, something changed. She stopped being afraid. She stopped feeling human. And when the restraints broke, when the monster inside her woke up, the real nightmare began. And this time, they would be the ones screaming, like, share and subscribe to witness her revenge. Darkness, cold, silence. A slow, rhythmic beeping cut through the void, faint at first, then growing stronger. She wasn't sure if the sound was coming from within her or from the outside world. Her body felt heavy, her mind clouded, as if submerged in thick, viscous liquid. Her eyelids fluttered open, and the first thing she saw was a sterile, bluish-white glow overhead. Harsh fluorescent lights buzzed above her, embedded in a metallic ceiling, casting a sickly pallor across the walls. The air was thick with the sterile scent of antiseptic and something else, something metallic and rotten. She tried to move, but something restrained her wrists and ankles. A cold sensation pressed against her skin. Restraints, tight, unyielding, as if they had been adjusted for something far stronger than she remembered being. Panic surged through her veins. Then came the voices. She's stabilizing, heart rate is accelerating, but nothing outside of expected parameters. Good, increase the dosage of the suppressant. We can't afford another incident like last time. Another voice, cold and detached, spoke from somewhere behind the haze of her blurred vision. She's adapting faster than the others. The genetic fusion is taking hold. Their words made no sense. What were they talking about? She tried to speak, but only a rasping breath escaped her throat. Her mouth was dry, her lips cracked. Something sharp pricked at her tongue. She gasped as an unnatural sensation spread through her jaw, like something shifting under her gums. Then the pain struck. A burning, searing agony ignited in her veins, racing up her spine, exploding behind her eyes. She arched her back, thrashing against the restraints, but they held firm. Her vision blurred, colors bleeding together in a distorted haze, and then she saw her hands. They were changing. Her fingers twitched uncontrollably as her nails darkened, lengthening into sharp, pointed claws. Her veins glowed faintly beneath her skin, pulsing with an eerie bioluminescence. The dull hum of machinery around her was suddenly deafening, every sound amplified to an unbearable level. Panic turned into something else, something deeper. A raw, animalistic instinct clawed at the edges of her mind. She wasn't alone in her body. Something was inside her. Something was growing. The memories she couldn't trust. Flashes of her past flickered in and out, fragmented and unreliable. She remembered a name. Lena. That was her name. She was a person. Once. There had been a life before this. A city, a home, warm sunlight on her skin. She could almost recall a face. Someone important. A lover, a friend, but it was slipping away, dissolving into static. Lena gasped as the pain intensified, sharp stabs of something foreign surging through her nerves. Every muscle in her body burned. A screen flickered to life beside her, and for the first time, she saw her reflection. She screamed. Her face wasn't hers. Her pupils had narrowed into thin, reptilian slits. The irises glowed a deep, inhuman yellow. Her teeth, once normal, had grown into jagged fangs that barely fit within her mouth. The skin along her arms and collarbone was darkening, hardening into something rough and alien. She wasn't human anymore. Terror gripped her, but beneath it something else stirred. A voice deep and guttural whispered from the depths of her mind. "You are not alone, Lena." Her breath hitched. It was inside her, the thing they had put in her, and it was awake. The scientists' cruel observations. Beyond the glass walls of the containment chamber, a group of scientists observed in silence. Their faces were unreadable behind the reflective visors of their biohazard suits. "She's progressing faster than expected," one of them murmured, jotting down notes on a tablet. "Her body is already integrating the xeno-DNA. The fusion is stabilizing. And the neural link?" A pause. "Uncertain. We don't know how much of her mind remains intact. If the parasite gains full control, containment will be impossible." Their voices were calm, clinical, as if she wasn't a person anymore, just an experiment. One of them stepped forward, tapping a command into a control panel. A mechanical arm descended from the ceiling, a long syringe glistening at its tip. Lena's eyes widened. "No," she struggled, muscles burning as she fought against the restraints. A low growl rumbled from deep within her chest, a sound that didn't belong to her. "Let me out," she wanted to scream, but the only sound that escaped her throat was a monstrous snarl. The scientist hesitated. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. A monster's instincts emerge. Lena's heart pounded as something snapped inside her. The restraints groaned against her strength, metal bending as her body surged with unnatural power. The voice inside her mind spoke again, louder this time, almost commanding. "Break free." Lena's fingers flexed, her claws glinting under the artificial light. She twisted her wrists, ignoring the pain, and with a final burst of force, the restraints shattered. Alarms blared. The scientist recoiled, stumbling backward as she tore herself free from the table. Lena hit the floor, her knees buckling, her breathing ragged. She felt alive in a way she never had before. Then she looked up. Through the observation glass, she met their horrified gazes, and she bared her fangs in a slow, predatory smile. Lena's breath came in ragged, uneven gasps as she crouched on the cold, metallic floor of the containment chamber. The alarm lights bathed everything in rhythmic flashes of red, painting the sterile white walls in a nightmarish glow. The glass panels separating her from the terrified scientists vibrated slightly from the force of the alarm's blaring sirens. Her fingers, now adorned with sharp blackened claws, twitched as she struggled to process what had just happened. She had broken free. She had snapped the restraints like they were made of brittle twigs. Her mind reeled, flickering between moments of searing clarity and chaotic noise. Something deep within her surged with power. Something unnatural, something alive. It whispered in her mind, a presence that felt both foreign and familiar. It wasn't just inside her, it was part of her. A deep, guttural hunger clawed at her insides, twisting her stomach into knots. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, a primal rhythm that didn't feel human anymore. Beyond the glass, the scientists scrambled in frantic panic. "Security, she's loose! Increase the sedation gas! We need to contain her!" One of them, a younger man with wide, fearful eyes, pressed a button on the control panel. A loud hissing noise filled the chamber as thick, white vapor hissed from vents in the ceiling. Lena coughed, staggering backward as the gas enveloped her. A familiar lethargy crept into her limbs. Her eyelids felt heavier, her vision swimming. No, not again. She gritted her teeth, her body instinctively rejecting the sedation. A growl rumbled from deep in her chest, rising into a snarl that sent shivers down the spines of those watching. The presence inside her stirred. "They want to put us back to sleep," it hissed in her mind. "Don't let them." Lena clenched her fists. A sharp, electric pain jolted through her veins as something inside her shifted. No, transformed. Her skin, once soft, began to harden in places, faint dark scales forming along her forearms. Then she moved. Suya the Terror. She became Lena, launched herself forward with inhuman speed. Before the scientist could react, she slammed her claws against the reinforced glass barrier. A deafening crack echoed through the chamber. The entire room shuddered. The young scientist gasped, stumbling backward. "The glass, it's reinforced. She shouldn't be able to..." Another slam. This time, hairline fractures splintered across the surface. The reinforced wall, designed to contain any experimental subject, was failing. Panic exploded in the observation room. "She's too strong! She's adapting faster than the projections. Code black! We need the enforcers in here now!" Their words barely registered in Lena's mind. She wasn't listening anymore. She was acting, running on instinct, on something deeper than logic. The sedation gas swirled around her, but she barely felt it. Whatever they had done to her body, it was no longer susceptible to their drugs. She wasn't their experiment anymore. With one final, earth-shattering blow, the glass barrier shattered. Shards exploded outward, sending the scientists diving for cover. Lena stepped through the jagged remains, her glowing, inhuman eyes scanning the terrified figures before her. She could hear their hearts pounding, faster, erratic, their fear rolling off them in waves. Her lips curled back, exposing razor-sharp fangs. The presence inside her purred. They are weak, prey, the fear in their eyes. "Hold your fire," one of the scientists shouted as security forces stormed into the room, weapons drawn. Lena's gaze snapped toward them. Black-armored enforcers, their helmets reflecting the emergency lights, raised their plasma rifles. They weren't here to take her back. They were here to end her. One of them hesitated, fingers trembling against the trigger. Lena could see herself reflected in the visor of his helmet, a monster in human skin, a creature that shouldn't exist. That was all she was to them now, a mistake to be erased. Something inside her twisted, a deep ache spreading through her chest. She had been someone once. She had been human, hadn't she? The scientist who had spoken before, a woman with short, silver hair, stepped forward, raising her hands. "Lena, listen to me." Her voice was steady, but Lena could hear the slight tremor beneath it. "You don't have to do this." The words cut through her rage, piercing the fog of instinct screaming in her head. Didn't have to do this? What choice had they given her? They had torn her apart. They had changed her. And now they wanted her to submit. Lena trembled, her claws flexing involuntarily. The hunger inside her gnawed at her thoughts, demanding release. Her breathing hitched. She wanted to stop. She wanted to be human again. But it was too late. She could feel it in her bones, in the way her muscles tensed, in the way her heart no longer beat the way it once did. She wasn't Lena anymore. She took a slow step forward. The enforcers raised their weapons. The silver-haired scientist exhaled sharply. "Stand down," she murmured. But it was too late for them too, because Lena's transformation was far from complete. Lena stood amidst the shattered remains of the containment chamber, her breath ragged, her mutated body trembling from the raw power coursing through her veins. She could still hear the erratic heartbeats of the scientists, their shallow, terrified breathing. The room reeked of their fear, the scent almost intoxicating. But something inside her resisted. She clenched her jaw, her elongated canines pressing against her lips. Her mind was a battleground, the last remnants of her humanity fighting against the primal, monstrous instincts that clawed at her consciousness. The silver-haired scientist, Dr. Evelyn Roth, held her ground. Her voice had been calm before, but now Lena could hear it. The faint quiver in her breath, the strain in her throat as she forced herself to stand still. Evelyn was afraid, but not of dying. She was afraid of what Lena was becoming. "Don't do this," Evelyn said softly. "You're still in control." Lena's gaze flickered to the guards, their plasma rifles locked onto her. Red targeting dots danced across her skin, marking her as an imminent threat. She exhaled sharply. Maybe she was. Maybe she wasn't. Her claws twitched at her sides, her fingers curling slightly. She could feel the weight of the transformation in her muscles, an unnatural strength, a power that shouldn't belong to anything remotely human. But she had been human once, hadn't she? A memory surfaced, fleeting, fragile. A name, her name, Lena Carter. She had lived before this nightmare. There had been a life, a purpose, a family. Hadn't there? The voice inside her snarled, twisting the memory apart. No, that was a lie. You are what you were always meant to be. A moment of hesitation. Evelyn took a slow step forward, her hand still raised. Lena, she said again, voice barely above a whisper, you don't have to fight us. Lena flinched at the sound of her own name. It felt wrong, like it no longer belonged to her. One of the enforcers shifted, his finger pressing more firmly against the trigger of his weapon. Lena's eyes snapped to him, reading his intent before he even acted. He was going to shoot. They all were. Her body reacted before she could stop it. In a blur, she moved. The monster strikes. The first guard barely had time to blink before Lena was upon him. With inhuman speed, she seized his rifle, twisting it out of his hands in one fluid motion. The metal groaned under her grip before snapping like a brittle twig. The enforcer staggered back, eyes wide in shock. He hadn't even processed that he was already disarmed. Before he could reach for his sidearm, Lena grabbed his armor and threw him across the room. He crashed into a reinforced glass panel, the impact sending jagged fractures spiderwebbing across the surface. Panic erupted. Open fire! Plasma rounds exploded through the air. Lena ducked, her enhanced senses calculating every trajectory, every movement before they even happened. She twisted her body with unnatural agility, weaving through the barrage of glowing energy rounds. The shots that did hit her barely slowed her down. The first seared against her shoulder, the second grazed her side, but the pain was distant, as if her nerves were adapting. She snarled. The instincts inside her welcomed the challenge. Fight, survive, dominate. One of the guards reloaded, but before he could pull the trigger, Lena closed the distance. She lashed out, her clawed hands slashing through the armor plating on his chest. Sparks and blood splattered as the enforcer collapsed, his weapon skidding across the floor. A deep growl rumbled in her throat. They were too weak to stop her. She turned to the remaining forces. They took a hesitant step back. For the first time, they realized the truth. She wasn't just escaping, she was evolving. The unfinished experiment. Lena, stop! The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. She froze. Evelyn stood there, her hand still raised. But now something else was in her expression. Desperation. Lena's body trembled, the monstrous rage inside her, fighting to take control again. Her breath was heavy, her mind a war zone. You're not a weapon, Evelyn whispered. You're not their experiment. Lena's claws twitched. She wanted to believe that, but the truth was staring her in the face. The blood on her hands, the shattered bodies at her feet. The way her own reflection, gleaming in the shattered glass, was something unrecognizable. She wasn't human anymore, and she never would be again. The alarms continued blaring, but for the first time since she had broken free, Lena hesitated. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a way back. Or maybe it was already too late. Lena stood still, her chest rising and falling rapidly, her elongated claws trembling at her sides. The air reeked of scorched metal, burnt flesh, and something else, her own rage. It radiated off her like heat, an uncontrollable wildfire she couldn't put out. The security alarms continued their piercing wail, red emergency lights casting frantic shadows against the ruined lab. The guards who had survived lay groaning on the floor, their weapons either shattered or abandoned. She had done this. She, not the scientists, not the ones who had injected her with their horrifying experiments. Her own hands. The monstrous part of her whispered in her ear. They deserved it. They were going to kill you. But the small, fading fragment of her humanity, the piece that was still Lena Carter, fought back. Had they really deserved this? Or was she exactly what they had tried to create? The eyes of the creator. A slow, deliberate clap echoed through the chaos. Lena snapped her head toward the sound, her enhanced vision immediately locking onto him. Dr. Abram Voss. He stood just beyond the shattered viewing glass, hands clasped behind his back, his white lab coat spotless, as if none of this destruction had touched him. His eyes, sharp as scalpels, dissected her with an unsettling level of curiosity. Lena, he said smoothly, stepping closer. Magnificent. The word sent a ripple of nausea through her. You! Her voice was raw, inhuman, vibrating with something deeper than sound. You did this to me. Voss tilted his head, as if considering her words like a hypothesis he had already tested. No, my dear, he corrected. You did this to yourself. Her claws clenched. Voss continued, stepping over the bodies of the fallen guards, as if they were nothing more than discarded test subjects. I only provided the opportunity. You were the one who embraced the change. He gestured toward her with one gloved hand. Your body adapted at a remarkable rate, faster than any subject before you. Lena's stomach twisted. Subjects? She repeated, voice dripping with venom. There were others. Voss smiled. Of course. Do you think you were the first? The horrors that came before the walls around her suddenly felt too small. The weight of his words crashed down on her like an avalanche. She had seen the other containment cells, the locked doors lining the hallways, the ones she had never been allowed to enter, the screams she had heard. She had thought they were distant echoes of failed experiments, but they weren't echoes. They were real. Lena's breath hitched, the horrific realization sinking into her bones. Where are they? She whispered. Voss's smile widened, like he had been waiting for her to ask. Most of them didn't survive, he admitted with mock regret. But a select few, well, let's just say you may meet them soon enough. A cold dread coiled around her spine. She wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. A cage of her own making. Lena lunged. Voss didn't flinch. Before she could reach him, a powerful shockwave surged through her body. Pain, blinding, searing pain, erupted from deep inside her, sending her collapsing to her knees. Her veins burned as if they had been set on fire, 1,000 needles stabbing into her organs at once. She choked out a scream, clawing at the floor, her vision blurring. Above her, Voss watched with clinical satisfaction. Ah, he mused. So the failsafe still works. Good. Lena's body convulsed. What did you do? She gasped between spasms. Voss crouched beside her, his expression eerily calm. You didn't think I'd let you escape without a contingency plan, did you? He said. After all, you're still my experiment. Her eyes flickered, flashes of blue, of red, of something unnatural. You're lying, she snarled, trying to push herself up. But she couldn't move. Her limbs refused. A cage, invisible but unbreakable, locked her in place. She wasn't free. She had never been free. And Voss had just reminded her exactly who was in control. Pain. It wasn't the sharp, searing kind, nor was it the dull ache of a wound healing. This was something deeper, as if her very cells were rebelling against her. Lena lay sprawled on the cold, blood-slicked floor, her body twitching as if struck by a voltage too high for any normal human to endure. But she wasn't just human anymore, was she? Voss had made sure of that. The shock wave still pulsed through her veins, tendrils of agony slithering beneath her skin. She could feel it, something foreign, something alive inside her, coiling around her bones, sinking deeper into her muscles. It wasn't just pain, it was control. The puppet master's hand. Voss stood over her, his expression calm, as if he were simply waiting for the results of an experiment he had long anticipated. It's fascinating, really, he mused, stroking his chin. The way your body is adapting. The others, well, they didn't make it this far. Lena clenched her teeth, struggling to move. But her limbs wouldn't obey. Her claws remained frozen. Her legs refused to shift. She was trapped in her own flesh. Voss crouched beside her, his white-gloved fingers pressing lightly against her throat. Your neurolinkage is flawless, he continued, like a scientist admiring a well-crafted machine. Every synapse, every nerve, responding to my command, just like I designed. Lena's breath hitched. Designed? Her mind recoiled. No. She wasn't a machine. She wasn't his project. But then, why couldn't she move? The things she couldn't see. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm blared. The facility was still on high alert, but the guards who had tried to stop her lay broken around her. And yet, none of them had shot at Voss. No one had stepped in to stop him because they all knew the truth. She was never meant to escape. She had never been free. Voss had been letting her believe she had control just long enough for the transformation to be complete. Her pulse pounded against her temples. He planned this. The rage inside her coiled like a living thing. You think you can control me? She snarled, voice distorted, guttural. Voss smirked. I don't think, Lena, I know. He snapped his fingers, and suddenly she stood up. A body that wasn't her own. Her limbs moved, slow and methodical, not by her will, but by his. Lena gasped, trying to fight it, but it was useless. Her clawed fingers flexed, her spine straightened, her breathing evened. She was a marionette, a living, breathing, monstrous doll in his hands. And worst of all, her body felt good. It responded perfectly, stronger, more powerful, more complete than it ever had before. She hated it. Her glowing eyes locked onto Voss, her face twisting in fury. Let me go. Voss only smiled. Oh, my dear Lena, he said, his voice a gentle mockery. You're still clinging to the idea that you're separate from what you've become. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a sleek metallic device. A small screen flickered to life. And then she felt it, a command, a pulse inside her mind, as if her own thoughts had been rewritten. Her claws lowered, her rage dimmed, her voice fell silent. A single word flashed across the screen. Obey! Lena's vision darkened. Her body submitted. She wasn't free. She had never been free. And now, she never would be. The monster he wanted. Voss pocketed the device and stepped closer, placing a firm hand against Lena's cheek. You were always meant for this, he murmured. Lena wanted to scream. She wanted to tear him apart. But her body wouldn't let her, because she belonged to him now. The moment Voss pressed the device in his pocket, Lena knew. She wasn't human anymore. She was a weapon. Her body moved, not by will, but by command. A marionette with invisible strings, a creature designed for one purpose, obedience. And yet something inside her fought back. The chains in her mind. Deep within the recesses of her consciousness, Lena could feel the foreign presence slithering through her neural pathways. It wasn't just control, it was rewriting her, making her forget who she was. Her fingers curled, her fangs ached. She could feel it, the shift, the submission, the moment she almost let go and became what he wanted. But something was wrong. A spark, a glitch, a whisper in the dark corners of her mind. Fight, a command not from him, but from her. Somewhere beneath the layers of rewritten flesh, deep within the corrupted marrow of her bones, Lena's will screamed. Voss was wrong. She wasn't his creation. She was herself. And no one, not even him, would take that from her. The man who played God, Voss, still smirking, admired his work. You're adjusting beautifully, he said, circling her like a sculptor admiring a statue. Better than I ever expected. Lena's muscles remained locked in place, her throat refusing to let out the snarl she wanted to release. Tell me, he mused, fingers grazing her jawline. Do you remember what you were before this? Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. The chains in her mind tightened. A part of her screamed. Voss sighed, pulling the metallic device from his pocket. Still resisting. It's adorable, really. He flicked a command, and Lena's knees buckled. Her body collapsed onto the blood-stained floor, a guttural snarl escaping her lips. She wasn't in control, but the pain was real. She could feel her cells shifting, bending to his will. Her claws, once her own, now trembled with the weight of his control. And then, the voice inside her spoke again. Not him, not anymore. The monster in the mirror. The room was lined with mirrored glass. Voss loved watching his work, his experiments, his creations. Lena knew it now. She wasn't the first. She was just the first to survive. And in that reflection, she saw herself. Not the girl she used to be. Not the person she had fought so hard to remain. but a twisted thing, blackened veins pulsing under stretched inhuman skin, eyes burning with something ancient. She should have been afraid. She should have screamed. Instead, she grinned, because for the first time she saw it clearly. Voss thought he had won, but he had made one fatal mistake. He had built the perfect monster, but he had never controlled her heart. And now, it was her turn to play. With a glitch in his design, Voss turned away, already convinced he had broken her. He never saw her fingers twitch. He never noticed the faintest curl of her lips. He had built her to obey, but something inside her had survived. The whispers grew louder, the control weaker, and in that moment Lena realized she wasn't the prisoner. He was. Lena's breath was slow, calculated. She had been waiting for this moment, the moment his arrogance would blind him, the moment the chains would loosen just enough. Voss had made a crucial mistake. He thought she was a creature, but in truth, she was something else entirely, something he never anticipated. The first strike, Voss turned his back, tapping on the sleek, metallic device in his hands. A simple flick of his fingers, and she would be his forever. His voice was calm, collected. "You're almost ready," he mused. "It won't be long now." He never noticed her smile. Not the frightened, desperate grin of a caged animal, but something else. Something that made his blood freeze. By the time the alarms blared, it was already too late. Lena moved. A blur. Faster than the eye could track. Voss barely had time to react before his device was shattered in her claws. A mess of broken circuits and sparks. The control was gone, and now he was the one trapped. His own experiment turns against him. Voss stumbled backward, eyes wide in shock. Impossible. This was impossible. The conditioning was absolute. The programming was flawless. And yet, Lena was smirking. Her voice came slow and deliberate. "You thought you built me, Voss." She took a step forward. "But you didn't create me." Another step. "You just woke me up." Voss's fingers trembled as he reached for the emergency override. But before he could touch it, crack. His wrist was snapped in her grip. The scream that followed was delicious. The predator's fall, Voss collapsed to the ground, clutching his shattered wrist. His mind raced, desperate for a way to regain control. But there was no control anymore. There was only her. Lena crouched down, tilting her head. She could smell the fear in him, the same fear she had felt for so long. It was intoxicating. "How does it feel?" she whispered. Voss's breathing was ragged, desperate. "Lena, you don't understand what you're doing." Her claws traced the side of his face, slow and calculated. "Oh, but I do!" She leaned in close, her voice dripping with amusement. "I'm doing what you always wanted, Voss." She grinned, her fangs glinting under the sterile lab lights. "I'm becoming perfect." No more chains. Voss tried one last trick. With his free hand, he reached for the concealed weapon in his coat, a pulse injector designed to overload neural pathways. He lunged, but Lena was faster. Her claws sank into his chest before he could react. Deep, right where it mattered most. Voss's lips parted in a silent gasp. His eyes flickered. Disbelief, terror, acceptance. His final words never came, because by the time he realized his experiment had won, he was already dead, becoming something else. Lena stood over his lifeless body. The alarms continued to wail, red lights flashing all around her. But she didn't run. She didn't need to. She was free. No more control, no more commands, no more chains. She looked down at her reflection in the blood pooling at her feet. This wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning. Final glimpse. Somewhere in the depths of the facility, other experiments stirred. Other creatures like her, some broken, some waiting, and some just waking up. Lena smiled. It was time to wake them all. The alarms screamed across the facility. Flashing red lights painted the walls in rhythmic pulses, like a heartbeat. Lena stood still, her bare feet soaking in the warmth of the blood pooling beneath her. Voss was dead. His corpse lay motionless, sprawled across the pristine lab floor. And yet, this wasn't over. Not yet. The doors opened. A mechanical hiss filled the air. Then another and another. Along the corridor, steel doors slid open, revealing the others. They stepped forward, blinking against the artificial lights. Some were like her, fully formed, aware, evolved. Others still carried the haze of obedience in their eyes. Lena's gaze swept across them. So many of them. So many who had been broken, twisted, rebuilt, and now they were free. The last trial. A voice boomed from the intercom, sharp and desperate. All personnel evacuate immediately. I repeat, containment has failed. Lena tilted her head. Containment. Was that what they called this? A cell? A prison? A place where they had tried to erase her? She stepped forward, running her claws along the cold metal walls. It was funny. She had once been afraid of this place. Now, it was afraid of her. The last enemy. From deep within the corridors, the final threat emerged. Armed guards. The last defense of a dying empire. They moved in formation, their black armor gleaming under the sterile lights. Weapons primed, aimed, ready. All experiments stand down. The lead officer's voice was shaking. He was scared, and Lena could smell it. No more orders, a single word left Lena's lips. Soft, quiet, deadly. No. The guards hesitated, and that was all the time she needed. She moved, faster than they could track, faster than they could react. The first one went down, his throat ripped open before his finger could squeeze the trigger. The second, his skull caved inward, crushed under her claws. The third, he ran, and that was the smartest thing he could have done. But collapse. The facility was crumbling. Fires burst through the walls, eating away at the place that had held them captive for so long. Lena watched it burn. A part of her wondered, was this what freedom felt like? But she didn't have time for questions. She turned back toward the others. They were waiting for her to decide what came next. She took a breath. Then she spoke. The final words. "Follow me," she said. Her voice was calm but filled with purpose. "We're leaving." She turned toward the burning corridors, stepping over the bodies of those who had tried to control her, and one by one the others followed. They weren't experiments anymore. They weren't prisoners. They were something else, something more, something the universe wasn't ready for. And as they disappeared into the dark, the world would never be the same again. The end. The fire burned behind her. The facility, the place that had created her, twisted her, tried to own her, was nothing but ashes now. But this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning, because she wasn't the only one. There were others like her, monsters, survivors, weapons of war. And now they were free. The world thought it was safe behind its walls, protected by its rules, its illusions of control. But they don't know. They have no idea what's coming. And when they do, it will be too late. What do you think happens next? Drop your theories in the comments. If you love this dark sci-fi horror story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Turn on notifications because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. This is only the beginning. See you in the next nightmare.